So let's see.
All right.
Expressive.
I can't see any faces anymore. So can someone confirm that there's something on the screen right now looking like a presentation?
Yep.
It is. Yes.
All right. Thank you. We've got visual again also on your side.
It's just, the first one was for me, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right. We divided the presentation among us, but we will be maybe adding additional info whenever we feel like it. So we made an agenda for today. Well, no need to call the agenda out loud, but we managed to put some structure in our presentation, which is always good. And well, we're a bunch of tech people, so we don't have to go into business development, marketing kind of stuff. So let's just start with Object Guild's mission and vision. Just for your information, Erik was on 2 years ago with CodeParadise. A year before that, I think Object Guild was founded in 2019, and we're now partners in the company since last year, and that's why CodeParadise is also part of what we're doing with Object Guild. And we're a bit of how do you say it? We try to make the world a better place, and obviously, as we are both computer nerds or software programmers, whichever you like, we look at ways to do that using computers and software, and preferably also Smalltalk, of course. So the mission in very high level is to improve the relationship between human and computer. And it's not as if this is new. I think a lot of people have spent a lot of time doing this over the last 70 years. But a lot has changed since then, and we believe that the challenges that we face really need the power of computers to be able, so that we can solve them. And I think we think there's still a lot of room for improvement. Alan Kay used to say that the computer revolution hasn't happened yet. I think that is still largely the case, and we hope to play a very small part in making a change there. We believe that human abilities can even further be enhanced with software and computers. And we think that requires complex adaptive systems. So the way that the internet is a complex system made up of parts that are in themselves very easy, very simple. We think that a lot can be done with objects. So that's why we chose Smalltalk, of course. And well, not a day goes by when we are very grateful to be working with pure objects and Smalltalk and Pharo. And part of our thinking is also grounded in object thinking, which is a book written by David West, who was one of the founders of Object Guild. Well, we've got some other inspiration. So autonomous, behaviorally complete objects is part of our vision. We'd like to discover ways of directly manipulating objects and do that in a rapid live application development environment. So on to the next slide. Some inspiration, that's some concrete inspiration has been given by these people. David West, who's one of the founders, as I said, he's written Object Thinking, and he's got a very interesting sort of, how should I say, radical view and a view on object design, which I haven't seen anywhere else. How do you say that? Onbeïnvloed. Well, he's not
uninfluenced.
Yeah, he hasn't been influenced by a lot of modern ways of doing things, like modern languages and that sort of stuff. And he's got both computer science and anthropology under his belt. So that makes for a very interesting combination. And we like to pick his brain every time we can. Richard Pawson, who might be familiar. Unfortunately, he can't be here today. Hi, Richard, if you're watching.
Yeah.
He's worked on naked objects, written a book about it, built a whole framework, and is still working on it. And we're very grateful to be able to talk to him every now and then and discuss things, hear some of his experiences doing these kinds of things. And same holds for Rebecca Worf-Brock, who's laid a foundation using behavior-driven design. And well, we've been in contact with her sometime in the past and hope to be in the future, perhaps. And well, this one's for you.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, it said, and many more. I mean, even people on this meetup are inspiring for us. So what we did is with this, well, enhancing the abilities of the human and empowering them, is start to look at how would software look like, and we came up with a new approach. And to put the user back in control, we want to give it a first-person experience. You should be able sort of to grab the objects and use them directly. That's it. That's some of the ideas of the naked objects framework as well. You have to be able to point to it and do things. It also involves that you don't look at a software application as the process you have defined within your organization and try to follow that, because then you lose the objects in there, or you're focused on the wrong thing. We want to focus on being a tool to help the user solve problems. So that's the focus of our application. That gives a lot of flexibility to the user, and that might feel different than what people are used to. Focusing on the domain is a big part of it. Well, first of all, if you're talking to a user, you want to talk in the language of the user. So you want to talk in his or her domain elements, the objects which are well, real and possibly virtual, but real for them. And so that's what we're focusing on when developing, and we'll show that in a little piece of live programming as well. We hope, and otherwise maybe through the demo we can show some of that there. Well, the demo. I thought it was another slide. Can you imagine? So we're going to give a little demo of an application. It's a pilot application, and for those who maybe sort of skimmed the description of this session, what we have here is a framework we're building for developing business applications, but it's still in an early stage. So it's not finished. It's not foolproof, etc. But I think it's far enough to be able to show something here and give an impression. This is a pilot application we're building for a practitioner. So you'll see things like treatments and clients which are receiving the treatment, etc. So that's the domain we're going to be in. And I'm going to switch.
Yeah.
To the demo screen. Can you see a fairly wide screen, and on the left-hand side, a kind of catalog? Yeah, I see a thumb up. Thanks, Greg. So this is for people who've seen Naked Objects by Richard Pawson. This looks probably familiar. On the left-hand side, you see a sort of a catalog of domain objects or entities. We call them entities. And these are the things we start with. The funny thing is, when we were talking to Richard and we showed him some of this, his first remark was, "I'm shocked. What have you done?" This was sort of the first idea we had with Naked Objects, but we moved on. We still think there's a lot to gain in that first approach, so we still have that. Some might recognize it. So we've got entities of which we can ask for the instances, or we can create new instances. So I can look at the list of clients which is in this registration, and it's a typical paged view of a number of Oh, I did click here. Well, that's the demo.
The demo effect.
The demo effect. I'm gonna have a quick peek at my environment.
Hey, restart. Maybe this is to do with hooking up the browser to.
Oh, well, that could be the thing. All right.
Come on, reset development.
Yeah, sorry. We switched a bit between the demo environment and the.
Yeah, don't use reset.
And the live program environment. So maybe that's the reason why it doesn't work. Oh, starting it again. Yes, I'd like a new session. Although it's awkward that he opened up. Phew, that was scary. All right, so I can browse through the collection of items. I can search for someone and open up the screen for that client. It's a bit of a tall screen, but luckily it's pennable, so we can change, so we can make parts visible now. It's on a smaller screen to be able to show it better to you and to save some bandwidth. And we have what we call an entity form showing an instance of a client in this case, and we see all kinds of information. This is a special client, I have to say. So I'm going to put a reminder on here to do something with this client in a few minutes time. So I set a reminder, and well, it's a typical thing. You can enter information. As you can see, there's no save or submit button, so every change you make is direct. We don't want to have a form which we have to submit. And if we want to add something, we've got placeholders here, and we can press on a placeholder and it will open up a new instance belonging to this placeholder and do it. Make a description there, and you see it updates well, all occurrences of that instance. Well, I can create another thing. I can create a treatment which has a little bit more input can be put in here. And oh, I forgot, I've got this place here, but I also want to have this client. With this client, I want to register some persons. So I've got Pete here. I'm not sure if you've got a Pete online, but Pete, this one's for you. And a treatment is something which we can add a subject to. A subject can be either a place or a person. So we can drag something and it'll start to wiggle to say, well, I'm available for you. And if I drag Pete, it starts to wiggle as well. The interesting thing is that places and persons do not have anything in common, except if we look at it from a Smalltalk perspective, they're both objects. If I start dragging an address, oh, I clicked on it accidentally, but if it starts dragging an address, it won't wiggle, it won't accept it. But in this case, I want to add it to the place to the subject. And so now I have this piece of treatment filled in, and I can go and do some other stuff. So there's this very flexible way. I can even start a new treatment and we'll add the client later. That's typical thing what you wouldn't see in a regular application. Then you would have to have this workflow in which you select the client and do stuff before you can even start doing a treatment. And we think this type of software, which is not for every type of user, but for the people, knowledge workers would probably be a term that fits the bill. Would understand this. Yeah, I can start to start a treatment and fill in some information. Yeah, I know which client is. I'll get the client later, which can either be by making a new client, clicking on the client, or clicking the search button to start looking for this special client. Of course, that's Blakely, and now I can drag it in and connect it. So that's a a flexible way, giving a lot of power to the user, but it's a different kind of interface, of course. This is not something you'll see in an average application, probably. So might be something to get used to. The things we've demoed so far, people have been quite enthusiastic, so we hope that's the general way of looking at it. Well, that's good to see. If there's more items which can accept it, more elements will start to wiggle. And oh, well, there's the reminder. Of course, I had to do something for Alteren. Well, I'll snooze it for now. So we've got an interface which probably recognize it's mostly automatic. You don't specify locations in which to put things. So most of the time we would not be discussing this has to be 3 pixels more to the right, or this has to be a little different in color. Although those things can be changed, there's a lot of room in making things custom. We do a lot of automatic in the application. There's elements in the framework which say that some things can't be edited. So there's a lot of knowledge in the system about which element or which item is writable or not, and it will show us you can't do certain things with elements based on that.
Maybe even show the treatment period, month and duration stuff.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's a good one. So I've opened up a treatment period, and we enter these by months. We can type things. I can type in that it's going to be April, started a little earlier. But if I make a typo, it'll try to give a bit more context of, well, sorry, don't understand your input. It should be a very friendly system. Next up, we haven't implemented that. Next up would be that it would try to look if this JHGJ would be similar to some month, and then suggest that it could be changed, and then have a little button making that change. For now, I'll just type it in again. In this case, a treatment period is followed by an evaluation, so we can create an evaluation. On the bottom, we can start a new period once we've done the evaluation, but this evaluation first has to be planned in an appointment. Screens are a bit too thin here, too small here, but you'll get the gist. And you can drag things out as well. That's an interesting one. If I grab an element and just put it on the screen, it will open up separately. So you don't have to have this inspector-like or finder-like columnar display. You can also drag them out. And we can have things like a calendar can be shown as a different kind of thing. So not everything is an entity form as we've seen so far. And here on the left, we see this evaluation, and we can cite where we're going to plan this in time. And then it can be confirmed or rejected by the practitioner. This is typically something the practitioner would delegate to the assistant to put in the evaluations. Tasks, yeah. We can add reminders, but we can also add tasks to items on which we can put reminders if we'd like. Well, we've got to do something here, and we can put in an estimate, like a 1 hour's job, and its due date will be like the 30th of May. Oh, I have to add the year, of course. Well, of course, it's not the thing. Yep. What's another thing that could be interesting to show here? Oh, I can change the context. Like this task is connected to a context. I can remove that, disconnect it, and say, well, it's actually this treatment I want to add as the context, not the client itself. So there's quite quite some flexibility here in connecting things together, associating objects with other objects, creating ones, or searching for existing ones. We try to be modeless, so there shouldn't be any dialogue preventing you from doing anything else than, well, the sort of the purpose of the dialogue. It should be much more free. Yeah, well, looking at things.
Might show the task.
Yeah, we've got a little task list which shows things in a sort of a little card view of the things to do, like the to-do I just entered. Yeah. Oh, he can do something, of course, for the treatment period. I entered the treatment period. And well, I can say that it's done and then it's over. And if I refresh it, it's gone. And we can add, maybe that's easier on the client, there's more. We can add different filters onto collections, or we can put in sortings. So that's the typical operations you can have on such a collection of instances. Okay.
Yeah, you might show the updates of collection if you create a new instance or something.
Yeah, we can
stuff.
Yeah, if we add an instance, we can start a new one, but it will be recognized as, oh, there's something there. Because of filters, it doesn't update the collection itself, because it might fall out of the filter, or because of the sorting, it will be at the end, so it's not showing up there. And this is the test demo client. I'm adding a name filter, and I'm going to look for the demo client. There it is again. Similar, of course, I could have added it through the catalog here on the left hand side. I can add an element and it's there. So there's more ways to roam, we say in Holland. Maybe that's a typical Dutch way of saying things, but missing anything?
Don't think so.
Not yet.
No.
And maybe questions about what you've seen so far for the demo. We're going to explain a lot more, of course, but any questions so far?
We might want to look.
Oh, there's the chat,
right?
Oh, well, yeah, I see a question. What if you have dozens of treatments? Well, we can make dozens of treatments. That's not a big thing. So I'm adding a treatment, and I'm adding a treatment, and I'm adding a treatment, and then at some point, it's saying, well, show all treatments. It's not gonna add more in this view because it's going to be very large, and it's adding it to the right hand side. That made it wiggle a bit because it's enlarging the screen. All those treatments have gone here, but so it shows within the, again, what we call the entity form. It shows a number which is configurable. You can decide how many you want per screen, and then it'll show a show all button to open it up. And once I click, I clicked it twice. Once I open it up, it shows it in the column to the right, and I can continue, and I can add a lot of more, and it will do the pagination there as well. It should this bar should be lower. Sorry for that. Phone-sized screen, yeah, that's another question I see. And undo, it's questions we will be answering in the rest as well. Is it something to answer right now, or shall we?
Well, let's wait with that. It's on the list of to do.
Yeah. So if I might go deeper into my phone size screen question. First, I love this to pieces. You know, in Self, we did the object focused IDE, and we're one of the early champions of that. And I love how you got the direct manipulation object focus. I have to see if Dave West got any of his ideas from us. But in something like Swift UI, you know, or a phone size screen, you can't, or can you do multiple entities and have them seem physical and direct? Or do you only show one of these, what I would call an outliner, at a time on the phone screen? Have you thought much about that?
We have thought a little about it. I would I think would be fair to say.
Yeah, good question, by the way. Well, you had some past experience with making a mobile design because the user experience is completely different, right? You have a touch interface with a finger, which is on a smaller screen, so you don't have the resolution to really do much. So probably it will have a lot of implications for input and interaction with objects and that sort of stuff. So I'm not sure, we haven't really looked for any examples of that. There might be prior work that we can take as inspiration, but we've got some user experience experts around us. So we've already reached out to see if they're interested to do some brainstorming on these types of things and come up with novel solutions, because there's a lot of our architecture provides a lot of possibilities for making this work in a different way than a lot of other things. So we take, how do you say it, a child's view at these things and try to find new things without assumptions, without making assumptions.
I love it to pieces. Thank you very much.
Great, if you have input on this topic of mobile UI, we would be very interested to hear them as well, by the way. So maybe you already have some ideas.
Well, Randy Smith gave me the physicality ideas. He is where I heard them first in his alternate reality kit back in 1986.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not sure, but the phone as a window into a real world, just as you have the screen as a window into a real world, and directions of how people read things from, left to right, top to bottom. Salience is critical. I don't know. That's the best I can give you at the moment. I think the Apple has gone more in the graphic arts direction than the theater arts direction, and we always went more in the theater arts direction. So here the shadows, that's a theater artsy thing, but the gray, like the colors on a standard Apple menu, that's a theater arts direction, because rather than spotlight what you selected, they contrast the color the way you're selected. So the way the world has gone is some strange hybrid mixture of the two. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's another lens. You can look at your life through.
Interesting. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for your question.
Yeah. I see some more question. One of the latest arriving. What about direct manipulation with multiple sessions? Currently, there's only a signal instance of one of those clients. So if in another session someone is updating it, I'll see the updates as well. We could be in each other's way, but we'd figure that in many applications that will not be the case. And if it's the case, we'll show it. We keep a full track of all changes. So although not presently implemented, we can use that as an undo information as well for changes we might not want because we were unfortunately changing in the same area.
Yeah, we could do extended demo with a bit of distributed. I can open up on your IP address.
Oh yeah, you well, okay.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, that's good. So
assuming we have some time.
John is gonna connect
18. All right.
Through his laptop. He'll start it up. I'll have a look at a little questions here. Adding new domain concepts and entities is another question. We'll show that in a piece of live programming later on. We don't know the concurrency question I see here of Peter. We don't know yet, and it might be a very naive way, but we'd like to see how far we get with this approach before starting to build up interesting mechanisms of connecting multiple images and or databases and stuff. So we're going to keep it simple for the moment. There's a lot on our plate as it is. Well, the web framework, I see you question the web framework. Well, that's CodeParadise. That's something we're going to explain a bit about. It's a framework I've built, and the database is Voyage using Mongo as a database application. Another question I see is about specialization of representation. Well, that's very good possible. We haven't done it here. What you see in the demo is all sort of right off the shelf. The automatically created display, but we can create multiple views on the same object, and probably have the user select which he or she prefers. We'll describe a bit of the architecture later on, so I'll leave that question for now. Oh, by the way, I remember that's not in the presentation, but Tim, I have to thank you, because I think you're the one who put me on the track to the Shoelace framework, a web framework for web components. All the components you see here are Shoelace web components, and well, I like them, and they fit in quite nicely. Ah, there's not the reminder again. Hey,
What happened?
What happened? Did you see that happen?
So
have a look at the name of Alden, the Shoelace fan. It changed under my fingers. How did it happen?
So at the moment we've got concurrent use enabled, but there's no notification that someone changed something. It just occurred to me that you want to see that someone else is editing the object under your fingers. But there's bi-directional communication between server and client, so I can change things on the fly, and anyone having an active user session will see the same. Will see the changes that I'm making and that anybody's making. So that opens up a lot of possibilities, which we haven't really gone into yet. So.
Oh well, yeah. So also the question about the philosophy about showing from different perspectives. Well, that should be possible.
Yeah. We didn't really add that to the presentation, so
no.
We can. Does that fit in somewhere?
Well, again, the kind of. Sorry, again, what I mean by that is, how do you maintain identity and causality? I'm trying to turn on my video there. How do you maintain identity and causality in the user's mind when you need to show the two perspectives on the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an answer.
Like an example, maybe?
Well, let's see. What would be an example in this application domain? So one perspective on a client might be the treatments he's received, and another might be his insurance status. Mm-hmm. And I mean, one way is to put them all in the same entity, but then another way is you might want to have tables of sort of treatments and clients and tables of status, and change something in the table and it changes something over here.
Yeah.
And how you make it very clear and obvious in the same way you've done for the other things.
Well, that's a good question. We haven't, we didn't run into something like that yet. However, we believe that each object should be able to display itself. So that's actually how it's programmed. If you have a client domain model object, if you have an instance of it, we might even go into the running image through an admin interface or something, and lift an object out of the database and tell it to display itself in a user session, for instance. And then,
but what if identity is subjective? I mean, do you have a perspective that identity is always objective? That the way the world is carved into objects is fixed and unchangeable? Or can you have different perspectives on the world that carve it up into objects differently?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. This might be, Well, I've done some domain-driven design work. This might be a different bounded context, maybe. So that you look at a book, for instance, from a consumer perspective, and you want to see what it looks like, how many pages, and table of contents and that sort of stuff. And then as a salesperson or as a shipping company, you might want to know the weight and the dimensions and that sort of stuff. Is that sort of what you're referring to?
Well,
Those perspectives?
a book could be a thing, or an edition of a book could be a thing, or a page in a book could be a thing. And so when you talk about an object displaying itself, you might have other objects that encompass part of the original object, but not all of it, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have no good answers. Okay, these are the questions I wrestle with this philosophy, which I love.
Yeah.
Well, and it's very interesting. Yeah. So
currently, one of the things we do is when an entity is asked to display itself, it will try to display itself in an entity form, and it displays its elements, and every element is responsible for displaying itself. So I think that mechanism, in a sense, could be maybe used as well for if you're in another context, you can have a different type of display for your elements and or related items, and so that
or a different set of elements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that your question is partly also a modeling question, isn't it?
Yes.
As in we decide the decomposition of the domain, right? So depending on how we do that, that in large part determines how the application user interface is built as well. And I can envision maybe a client object, which is the representation of a real concept, a person, for instance, in real life, right? So you might ask it to give to provide a different perspective on itself, which then is linked to it. Like the client might be the main object, which is the sort of the true pure representation of the world. But then you might give sort of like a view on, which might have different characteristics and might be able to display itself in a different way. But this dependent object or whatever might then maintain the link with its original or something, and but be more free in displaying and behavior and that sort of stuff.
If in the future you find yourself tackling these things in more depth, please get in touch with me or do another presentation for the club or something, because I want to see what you come up with. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Great to hear. Thanks.
Yeah, I see.
Can I add a few comments?
Yeah, well, I was just seeing your chat message, but yes, do, Graham.
Yeah, I think there's some very interesting ideas around this, Dave, and it's something we've wrestled with a lot as well. I think one nice idea that I've seen is in the Glamorous Toolkit from Fink. They have the GT inspector, and it's quite a nice idea there where each object has a number of, quote, inspection methods, and you can define as many as you want yourself. And basically the framework collects those and provides tabs which provide different views or perspectives on that object. So one tab might give you a form view, one tab might give you a graphical view, one tab might give you a graph, things like that. So that's one really nice way of handling it, which is, extensible, but with a common framework.
Yeah.
Another nice way is partly dealing with it at the domain level, where, for example, you might model a role such as client, which includes a person object. That same person object might be part of another role, such as manager or something like that. The containing object would be modeled as an outer box, and the inner object would be shown within that as a contained object. So you can use containment and roles at the domain level and then embedding in the UI to deal with that. Something we've done a lot in our own tools is we we have a generic way of dealing with objects where an object is displayed as a combination of a form derived from all the property values and relationships for all the things it's connected to. And then selecting any relationship as a link displays the additional properties or the additional object. And you can navigate back and forth and basically around whichever relationships you want to. So those are just a few ideas.
Yeah.
Those are all good. And if there's a link, please send it out so I can see the. Thanks, Gavin. I mean, Graham. Sorry. Thanks.
Yeah, can't really give you a link per se to a particular thing, but I could do a demo for you at some point if you're interested. Drop me a note and we can set something up.
Well,
sure.
We'd like to be part of it as well if possible. So
okay, we're kind of busy with some new interfaces. I can demonstrate maybe what we've got so far.
Oh yeah, well.
It is live and it is a web interface, but we've got a lot more ideas of where it's going to go. But we could show what we've done so far if people are interested.
Yeah, it's nice. We did read up on a number of the moldable tools, things that Andrej Chis, for example, is also written his thesis about, I think, and which is currently part of. Well, I think it's part both of the Glamorous Toolkit as well as the current Pharo development environment uses these concepts. Yeah, yeah, we love it. It's good. Thank you.
Yeah. Ours is not strictly Pharo based. Ours is a different environment. It's got a long history, but it's primarily a domain model driven web repository. But yeah, we can share some ideas, I think.
Yeah, lovely. One little thing that popped to mind, I haven't used it in ages, but maybe it still works. I should be able to show an embedded form. Yeah, it does work. Wow. So you can also currently open up an embedded form within the form if you want to, don't want to open up the whole thing and then just pop it out a little and change something and then close it up again.
Yeah,
all right.
This is one instance of a different way of representing an object. Well, now it's a nested thing, but we've also thought about doing like a geographic representation or some kind of other domain that an object uses to display itself.
Yeah. All right. I think we're going to head back to the presentation. Time-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, your turn.
My turn. Yeah, so there were some questions about the architecture. Let's see if I can answer some of those. And Erik, feel free to fill in the blanks. So as Erik mentioned, we focused on domain model first. It's the basis of the application for us, and we believe in autonomous objects that are behaviorally complete. So not only do they have to have business logic, if you want to call it that, they also need to be able to display themselves and do other things that are related to the UI. We work with currently the term entities. There is, we're rediscovering ways of or modeling the meta domain, if you will. And entity doesn't really fit the bill, but we haven't found something that is a good replacement. So we're sticking with entity for now. And so that's the basic main class, if you will, in the domain model. And each entity can tell you something about its elements. And elements are defined in the class using Pharo slots. So that's something that we use a lot of and has helped us greatly in solving some challenges. The Pharo slots help us to update dependence, both in the UI and also on the persistence level. And it's an easy extension point because the slots themselves, of course, can sort of be the glue between certain meta behaviors, if you will, or generic behaviors that we want the framework to fulfill for us. And it allows us to work with transparent persistence, although the framework that we use, which is Voyage, we'll talk about that later, takes a lot of work out of our hands already. And in any business application, we think that certain objects need to be able to be activated, or ideally they would activate themselves, but not all objects are in memory of the image, of course. So we have built an activation task framework or activation framework. And on the UI side, as Erik mentioned, there's the generic UI is generated by the framework, but it's generated, basically through interpretation, I would say. We don't generate any code or whatsoever. It's interpreted. And it's based on CodeParadise, which uses a model view presenter pattern. And we'll talk more about that later. And as you've seen in the demo, it's extensible with custom UI. The default entity form view is already quite extensive, to our opinion, but there are lots of places where you would want to do something that's of specific value to a customer. And it might involve elaborate graphical representations or what have you. We shown the calendar during the demo, which is an instance of a custom UI. Security is always important in business applications, so we didn't do a lot of work on that, but at least we thought about it from the beginning and implemented a simple role-based access authorization scheme. We can implement method level authorization, so that's basically encapsulated by the object. So nobody, well, unless you really hack the framework, of course, but no sender of a message can't, or how should I say this? A message received by an entity is not performed unless you are authorized through the framework. So on the actual method level, any unauthorized access is prevented. And part of the power that the Pharo slots give us has also resulted in a simple implementation of audit logging, which can be used for security purposes. Over to you.
Yeah. So back to the domain model. We wanted to stay as close to the plain old Smalltalk objects as possible, preferably just subclass object, create a new class, have its instance variables and methods, class and instance side, and there you have it. That should be the thing. We didn't. There's a few things making that a bit more difficult for us, so we decided we'll have a base class which provides some, but that's mostly convenience stuff. And by using the Pharo slots, we can add behavior there, which would otherwise require us to use things like the value model, value holder patterns, which is always a bit in your face. I always have the feeling I'm hampered by having to ask for something's value inside the holder or inside the model, or having to create proxy kind of things, or delegating from specific holders and stuff. So we really love the possibility that the slots offers us to be working on a low level with, well, seemingly regular instance variables, but in fact we're working on these elements which are richer in behavior. And one of the things these slots offer as extras is they can describe themselves more easily. They can describe what kind of an element am I? Am I a regular association to another object? And what type of object am I usually connected to? We can specify that, or if we want to, we can postpone it to later, or we can have a collection kind of. So it's a bit like the one-to-many relation, or many-to-many relations we can describe. And the element of the slots also help, for example, in doing some of the basic validations. If we've decided that an object slot refers to some type of thing, it can help invalidate that if I receive a value for that element slot or for that instance variable, can I accept it, yes or no? And if I accept it and it's different than what I already have as a value, I'll announce or let the entity announce a change has been made to one of its instance in one of its elements, instance variables. So these mechanisms help in using the user, getting the interface to show new values, or the persistence layer to store new information into the database. Yeah, I'm on for this one as well. Well, that's what it's saying here. It makes it transparent. I don't have to write any code explicitly. I don't have to do a self-object changed or anything on every setter method I have. It's auto magic that's happening there. And well, again, it's the slots describing it. We do use a lot of reflection as well to allow the model to implement specific behavior we won't put into the slots. The slots shouldn't be the place to put in every piece of behavior we want. There's a lot of logic which should be in the entity object itself. So we can have methods which by reflection are used. Things like if we have a price on an entity, we can implement an isPrice_writable method, and it will use this to decide whether it's writable. If the entity itself is non-writable because of reasons, it will not ask the price whether it's writable, but it already knows. And for example, when we start to drag and drop things in the user interface, like the treatment which has a subject, something that the treatment is on, when I start to drag an element, it will be asked, well, can this subject be accepted in this entity? And there are reasons for accepting certain types of subjects, yes or no, and that can be implemented in the entity. So the entity has a lot more knowledge, of course, because it's the greater thing than only the limited element, and it can decide what to do there. And there are more hooks for also the user interface to decide to be different than the regular interface, or for the persistence layer to do things differently. So we're not trying to limit everything into this framework and make it another harness for anything. We want to keep the flexibility on our side as a developer as well. It should be something that's not only for the user, but also for us as developers, that should be available. So custom user interface and custom persistence is still possible with these hooks and mechanisms. All right, I think I'm handing it over.
Yeah, so a little bit about persistence, the way we currently implemented that. We had some prior experience with VisualAge using Mongo, and already that's a very useful library and framework, because it basically supplies transparent persistence for you out of the box. So we've taken that as a basis for our persistence. The way to customize things in VisualAge. Well, I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but I'll come back to the first point. The way to customize things in VisualAge is to define what they call them, VisualAge descriptions, I believe, for instance variables and so on. And again, the Pharo slots really came in handy for that, because it gives a lot of freedom describing how things should be persisted. And as we talked about before, we built a modeless UI, so there's no view edit, no explicit submit buttons. And if you basically, we decided that if you change an element, that's the level of granularity, if you will, that something is persisted. So not every keystroke results in database saves, but if you do change a field, if you call it that, or drag something or do something else, to one of the elements, then it saves. But we've already, obviously, a lot of applications use transactions and sort of forms, wizards, maybe even multiple dialog boxes or screens, where you go through a process and then only save in the end. And this is something that's so sort of ingrained, if that's the right word, into developers' mindset. At least it was in mine, that we really had to take some time to look at alternate solutions. And we're doing our best to stay in the realm of not using transactions and not using sort of a bigger change on an object. But the chances are that we will run into a scenario where we want to do something like that, and we have multiple options to enable that. But it's sort of at odds with the direct manipulation, and dialog boxes at the moment are a no-go for us. So we're trying to find novel ways to solve these problems. We mentioned that an audit trails automatically saved. That's an easy addition to the way that slots work with persistence and that changes are announced. This could be a good source to implement undo redo, which was one of the questions that we saw in the chat. And well, yeah, there are obvious downsides to using a document database, but nowadays with all of the microservices hype and what have you, loads of people are now using document databases. So there's a lot of improvements to those technologies, a lot of new features added, which we might be able to use. And Mongo seems to be a solid platform for that as well. That's you again.
Me again.
Yeah.
All right. A little bit about the CodeParadise, the view side of things. So we start with entities, or our regular objects. The entities can interact with other entities, regular Smalltalk code, nothing special. And an entity can persist itself. It can ask if you send it a message save, it will save itself in the database. That's a terrible slip up there. EU. All right. Anyway, and an entity can display itself. If you send it a message display, it will display itself within the session, the application session that's currently running for a user. Otherwise, there's no location where to display itself, and that's done through a presenter. And the presenter will listen to the entity. If anything changes, it will render a view, and the presenter will also listen to the view. That if something relevant happens within the view will announce back to the presenter that something happened. So the white space between the left and the right hand side of the screen here is, well, the internet across which through WebSockets communication is done from the presenter to the view, which is running in your browser, and back from the view in the browser to the server where the presenter is running. So this means we've got full sessions on the server side. We can persist those. We can store sessions and let a user restore to where he or she was working on, and especially because we have this sort of unlimited canvas in which you can put your windows and elements which are where you're working on. That would be a thing to store your work. It would be your workplace. The alerts that arise currently will open up a new view once you click on the element which is part of the reminder. But if we put a position there, we can also bring you back to where you were if that's relevant to you, so that you might add a sort of a location pointer as well to reminders. That's one of the ideas we have for extension there. So once it's in the browser, it's a view. That's actually an HTML web component. We create web components from the entities we have, or the presenters will do that. And if we're interacting with the user interface, like we're clicking on a button or we're dragging an entity, that will be handled as DOM events within the browser, and relevant events like dropping an element somewhere, the view will send an announcement back to the presenter. In this way, there's no SQL injection possible, because the only thing that can happen from a client side is that there's an announcement that something happened, and it's going to be a simple thing. Like also the presenter will only send simple strings to the view. It will be a very thin type of view there. But what's running inside the browser? Well, there's a little CodeParadise Smalltalk image. It's a 200 kilobyte Smalltalk image created through the Pharo bootstrap process, and it's running an actual bytecode compatible virtual machine, the SqueakJS virtual machine from Vanessa Freudenberg. Greg is also a very good supporter and helper in developing that. And it allows to have, well, bytecode compatible code running there. So the presenter will create views by sending bytecode of classes and methods to the, or well, of course, only of the methods, but it'll instantiate classes as well on the client side. And that will create the view and allow it to present things and start listening to events and all. And it's all done dynamically, so you don't have to load up a lot of information before you start running the application.
So yeah, like you just said, the Smalltalk image is basically pre-built, and we make some changes every now or then. Yeah. But it's loaded through an HTML page, of course, and then it gets all of its dynamic information, so classes, view classes, and so on, through the WebSocket communication.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's very limited. There's no, there's even no DOM element or web component available in the earliest image, this 200 kilobytes. It just has the communication logic there, and the ability to create a class and add methods, and with that it can build its own environment, and it will only add the things that are necessary. I'll talk a bit about it more on the next slide, so I'm continuing. Again, we're using the model view presenter. Even model view presenter have a view variance, I guess. So our way of using it is that a presenter knows both the model and the view. The model announces updates, and if the presenter listens to these announcements, and it will render the view based on the update, and the presenter will also listen to the view, and if the view announces any user interaction, the presenter will pick that up and update the model. So the presenter is the controlling part, if you want, in this setup. But the model doesn't know about views, and the view doesn't need to know about the model. If like drag and drop is happening, it's all happening inside the browser. Only just when starting a drag, it will ask, okay, is there anything on this screen that's relevant to start wiggling, showing I'm interested in you, you can drop me here, and that is something that's decided on the server side. So that's not something that's happening inside the client. But from that point on, it's the knowledge in the browser, in the client, to handle the drag and drop. And once it's dropped, it's again announced back to the presenter, like there's a drop here of some item. Is that something you can handle? And again, the views are very thin. It's sort of like the glass. There's only strings which we send to the view to render. No entity objects go there. No element knowledge is in the view side. Because it's web components, we use the web components based on templates, meaning we can write HTML and cascading style sheet snippets to define how a view looks like. And if we change one of these things, it will update immediately in the browser. That's a convenience thing for us as developers, that if we're building a new user interface element, we can see changes immediately. We see the effect on it. Same holds for any code. We develop these web components, like the handling of a click event is something we program in Smalltalk. We just say the regular way we do announcements when a primary click event occurs, then send this message to that object. That's how we write regular Smalltalk code, no JavaScript code needed there. If I add a method to a view class, it will be installed in any running views at that point. So again, a convenience thing we can develop quite quickly with this way of working. We can integrate with JavaScript libraries if we want to. We can wrap these or have them explicitly sort of provisioned or managed by our own Smalltalk code. But it's we prefer to stay as much in the Smalltalk code as possible because it's our preferred single language to use, and we don't have to learn more things. We have to learn HTML and CSS already, so that's enough. Well, I mentioned already that we have the Smalltalk bytecode is sent to the browser, and because of the WebSockets, we have bidirectional communication, so we can push things to the browser, and we don't have to wait for the browser for the user to sort of do another request to update information.
Yeah.
Okay. There was quickly looking at the chat. There was a question. I think is that answered now? Can't remember. If I can't seem to find it. Oh well, Tim, you asked if there's a lot of change. If a lot of changes have happened. I don't think so. CodeParadise is pretty much stayed as it was from like 2 years ago. Of course, all those little updates and things, and some extra shoelace components have been added, but it's nothing majorly, I suppose.
Yeah, most is in the Expressive Systems library, right?
Yeah. We're actually, so it's, well, the title of the presentation, I think it's based on CodeParadise, but CodeParadise is just one of the components inside what we're building. Actually, it's the thing that's most visible, of course, but it's just one of the components we're using. Okay.
Yeah.
Your turn again.
Well, a little bit about security. I already talked about this, so I'm not sure how much I can add here. I've worked a lot in enterprise application environments, and there are these huge implementations using maybe IBM software or something else, which are dedicated for security and authorization. But basically, it all comes down to a role-based access control model in most instances. So that's what we chose here as well. Obviously, you've got a subject that has one or more roles, and a role has one or more permissions. And permissions can be defined by the entities. So you can basically compose a role out of certain permissions you have on a certain entity. But this is quite flexible. We haven't done a lot with this at the moment. So it's probably, we're probably able to extend this to other ways of working. We try to set up a flexible authentication mechanism. So a subject has credentials, and a credential can be a user password credential, but it might also be two-factor authentication or some federated authentication method, or whatever you can think of. And all this is also done using entities and elements. And yeah, as I mentioned before, the permissions are checked at the method level. So we've done an implementation where within the method, if you want to apply authorization, you can assert a certain permission, which obviously you would do at the beginning of a method. And if the current user subject, so that means the context in which the message has been sent, does not have, so the subject does not have the role that has this permission, then the execution is aborted and an error is generated. So for now, that gives us enough flexibility to do business application level security. And there was bound to be a client that wants different or more things from a security perspective. And then we'll we'll add features to that as needed. All right. I see we're almost 9:30, so time for some live programming.
Yeah.
There be dragons here.
Even die andere stop.
Yes, let's let's not look at this. Stop development on this one, and then
Move over.
yeah, there it is.
Je moet close.
Yeah. And let me start this one. All right. This might, need a restart. So we're working on one of the things that we find important is that also our experience is as dynamic and expressive as it can be, right? Direct manipulation also of the entities and the development workflow should be well, as supportive as it can be. So we've been working on ways to make it as interactive and on the fly as we can. So we've started on a boilerplate project, which is sort of a starting point for us to do rapid prototyping, possibly with clients. We've already done a little bit of work with this, and we've got some really good feedback. So we're planning to use this for potential new clients, maybe during a sales session or pre-sales or what have you, to flesh out some ideas and show them how the framework works, and then hopefully get the client to come on board. So let's see, I've removed the visibility authorization, so any object is now visible, so I don't need to log in here. So you see, I've now have all of the permissions on all of the entities. So you see task and role and user here as well, but I'll leave them for now. The boilerplate has a person, entity, and Jonathan and Erik are persons here. So we can open them up. They just have a name and that's it. So we thought to do a little demo of dynamic rapid prototyping. And we thought to work with an example where you have a department, for instance, in a company or something. The department might have a head and employees, and we might have a project that is run by a department, for instance, and a project is staffed by people, and they can only be staffed by employees within the department. So let's see how that works. Let me just create, I'll put this one away. What was the, we had Smalltalk user group prefix and then a department. And let me leave the name as well. So I'll save, I'm showing you the image and the browser as well, so you can see what happens if I save. Well, nothing happens here because I need to refresh the element classes, but here we've got department, and I can immediately create a new department and say, okay, so we've got a sales department. Mind you, some things might break because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done additionally to running a business application to actually develop it live. So you might see some errors pop up. I might just ignore them. Feel free to ask if you have questions. So we've got the department, it's got a name, and we also want to say, okay, so we've got a head of a department. So I'm going to say we're using slots here, but we're using a specific notation. Notice the different what do you call it? Symbol operator. No. Yeah, for the message. So this is going to be an object slot on, and then the boilerplate person entity is called ES boilerplate person. There we go. So I'm going to save this slot
Well,
there it is. So with an open department, at the moment it doesn't work. It used to work, so we'll have to look at what makes that change. But if I open up the department, it immediately has the head of the department slot here. And let's say that Erik is the head. So
am I the head of sales now?
Yeah, you're head of sales.
Oh, wow.
Didn't
cool.
know that,
Is that a promotion?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
I don't know.
Nice.
So that's the first. And then we've got employees. And that's a collection slot. And that's a collection slot on boilerplate person as well. And I need to make sure to say, okay, the initial value of this collection slot is an ES set. So we had to, for technical reasons, we had to create some collection classes that know how to handle themselves when they're part of a collection slot.
Department gesloten.
Do you want me to close the department?
Yeah, probably.
Let's just try it anyway.
Oh, you want to try it?
Yeah. Let's. No, there is something there. Oh well, close it, open it up. There it is. So employees, which is a collection, and I can drag like I just did, or I can click here to create a new one. So let's say John Doe is also an employee here, and I'm an employee as well. So that's all well and good. But what about Erik? Erik can also be added as employee. But let's say that we have this rule that head of departments can't be employees, right? So Erik talked about the can accept. Well, what you want to call it, so like the message that you can actually implement the method to determine how, in this case, a collection slot reacts to an entity being tracked. So I'm going to say, can employees accept, or can accept employees?
Can head. It's the you want to.
No, I want to say employees. So I can
employees, yeah,
accept.
Yeah.
And then an entity. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to accept this entity as long as head not is an entity, right? So now I'm going to drag Erik, and
I can't be edit anymore.
It's not responding, so that doesn't work. Oops, excuse me. I'm already in there. It's a set, so it doesn't allow that either. But let's see, John Doe is in there. That's
Jane.
Jane, that's very creative. Jane Doe, is it?
Right.
Yeah. So we got Jane Doe, and she can go in there. So there you go. Let's see. Let's create a project. So we'll say we've got a project. It's got a name. And let's speed up things a little. We can say, I'll say staffed by, but then I'll go for a collection slot, also on boilerplate person, right? So there we go. I have to reload. And there's project.
I saw a question on the chat. Where do the nice icons come from? Well, this is the default icons, as you can see now. So department and projects share the icon, but I think Jonathan can change that.
Yeah, good question. Here you can see that it says department. It has this icon. Here we've got the sales department, but it still says department. So if I open up the instances, I see department. So that's not very useful. So let's do both the icon and the name. So instance side, I can say, okay, I've got title, and my title is if, well, let's say if name, if nil, then answer what to do. Just class title, maybe.
Super title.
Yeah, well, they're probably similar, right? And otherwise, name title. Poof. Did you see the change? It was immediately updated. So now it says sales, And we also want an icon that's going to be on class side. So I'll implement icon name, and then I'll have to take a peek because we use Font Awesome at the moment. Amongst others, there's a plugin option to do different icons. So we're using the free icons for from Font Awesome. So let's say we got a department. I obviously looked at icons that were suitable. So let's say building here. It was the other way around, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So there's sort of a naming convention. We have to say, okay. And then, yeah, so Font Awesome and then Font Awesome Solid and then building. So let me go back before saving. I hope this works.
I'm not sure.
I'll save.
You have to reload.
Yeah, because this is class side. So I'll reload the. And now we've got a department image. Well, there we go. So that's better. Just a second. Do we have something for project as well? What's a project? Like a clipboard, maybe? So I'll go to projects and we'll say icon name FAS clipboard. So whenever I'm going to reload in the next few minutes, I'll be able to do that. And well, so a project has a name. Let's just say, you know what? I'll just copy this one.
Yeah.
I'm a lazy programmer. There we go. Okay. Projects. No projects yet. Let's create one. You can do that over here or multiple different ways to do that. Let's say it's sales. So it's we've got a project called Happy Customer.
Oh yeah.
And it's staffed by, well, Erik is head of sales, so it's staffed by Erik. And who was your friend, Jane or John?
Oh, both.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, so put them in. But this is all nice and dandy, but let's say, forget about that. Let's say a project needs to be connected to a department. Let me save my image right now.
Always good thing to do.
Always good when working on a demo. So this is going to be a Stug department. And yeah.
Oh, there was one open.
So sad.
Yeah.
It's there though. So let's connect that to the sales department. But don't know what happened there. Let's now say that only people that are part of the department can actually staff a project. So again, that's a can staffed by except an entity. So an entity, I might actually say this is a person, right? So the person has to be part of the department. So department, let's see, if department is nil, department, no, can't do anything without a department. So no accepting of staff by. And otherwise, let's say department includes person, right? Some business meaningful methods here. So in department, I'll add includes person. Well, and obviously this is just a collection, right? So I can say either head is a person or employees includes a person. There we go. So now we've got all of these people and they're all in the sales department. So let's just kick me out of the sales department. Can I now staff the Happy Customer project? No, I can't. So that's a bit of how that works. And let's say how to do this. this was basically the end of my
Well.
my demo. But yeah, we got other stuff to play with. Let's say that a project has a budget. So that's an object slot on, well, let's just say integer. No, we've got a euro, right?
Yeah.
So let's see if that works out of the box. Initialize?
Yeah,
Initialize?
I think so.
Yeah, this might be useful to see. So that would just be 0 then, right?
Well, no, as the E is 0.
Does it need to
from
do?
number, yeah.
Save. Ha. We got. Let's just call it a warning, right? We got a warning there, but it works. So we got a budget here, and as you can see, it's in euros. So 50 euros. Let's say 500 euros for a happy customer. And what was I going to do with this?
You want to aggregate it onto the department, what it needs for a budget or something?
Well, that's ambitious.
Well,
Or
the derived slot on the department.
well, I was going to say something like status or something.
Okay, well that requires another.
Like an enum.
Yeah.
Well, or we could just say
But you could
confirmed first. I was going to do writable, conditionally writable. Just as an, it's not, it's similar to can accept, but let's say
we don't have booleans.
Not too bad.
Yeah, we didn't use them yet.
Do we have? We've got enum, and we've got a booking reason. I'm just gonna, as I said, I'm lazy, so we'll say I'll be working in this model. So I'll say we've got a project status, right?
Project status.
Stuck. Yeah. Okay, and it's open and closed or something. Doesn't really matter. It's just. All right. There you go. As you can see, there is a little bit of code generation there because we don't want to type all this stuff all the time. So now we've got a status, and I see that I removed this. So I'll say status is object slot still.
Yep.
And that's going to be start project status initial.
No, it'll use
The default.
The default.
Yeah. Boom. All right.
We'll ignore the warnings again.
Ignore the warnings. Do a little refresh there because it was. There we go. So we've got open, close now. Oops. So let's see. So is budget writable? What's the argument there?
None.
No argument.
No argument.
So status
Is open.
is open. Ta-da. So I'm gonna spend a little bit more money, 800 euros, and then it's closed. Shouldn't this be?
Hey.
Yeah, now it's great.
Yeah.
Huh.
That took too long, but
It took too long, but now it's disabled. So interesting. One of those dragons.
is the Pharo? No.
Yeah, this is good. Anywho's, these are some of the examples of what you can do. What do you think? More to be shown?
Or questions to
Any
be
questions?
answered, maybe. Anyone out there? Or is everybody gone to the drinks already, to the bar?
Yeah, maybe. Let's
Oh,
do
wow.
a.
Can you discuss how you do relationships?
Relationships between entities, you mean?
Yeah, I've done some digging into that area in the past. So I'm curious what you guys have done.
Well, so as you can see, we're using
Or the inverses. Yeah.
the object slots. Yeah, that's a good one. Is there a natural way to show that? So there is an additional feature that we added, which is called an inverse. So if you have an object slot on another entity, you can define an inverse. And if you change one of the sides of the association of the relationship, then the other one changes with it. And yeah, other than that, basically, it's an object reference. So or reference, it's just an instance variable conceptually to another object, which is then an entity, or to a collection of entities. And that's the way that we implement that.
Okay.
And VisualAge takes care of persistence of these things pretty well. So we didn't actually change much there.
Yeah, and we allow one to many, many to one, and many to many, sort of by default. So you can have different types, and it will sort of stop announcing the changes once it's settled down, which element is connected to which element.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's a tricky part. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's very
exactly. Yeah. But again, the element slots are really a really welcome element there to help negotiate between elements. The inverse is known, so both slots on both entities know each other. So that's a very convenient way of being able to decide how things are going, and it will check. Like if I'm setting we call it, we make an association. If we make an association, we will also check that the other side is also willing to accept this association, and it doesn't get into any trouble. Like in the example, if we could set the project and people together, and they would be both have relations, it would still check if it's someone from the department going onto the project, no matter if you drag the person onto the project or whether you drag the project to the person. Either way, it will check. So that's
yeah. It's good because I was experimenting with slots and gemstones, making some extensions to it. So it sounds similar what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think even in the default Pharo image, there are some examples of relation thing, and it turned out in the end it was somewhat similar. So that's
yeah.
But we added more, a lot more, I might say, by now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sounds good, guys.
A related question. So first, when you added the constraint to the staffed by, what would have happened if the constraint would be violated before?
Yeah, currently it would not validate that all existing elements are also matching. So it would accept if there was someone from another department. We don't validate the whole collection at the moment. That would be something we as because this is of course all what you're seeing here in this easiness of adding code would be our convenience. If we're adding logic on a sort of an application that's running, we wouldn't be editing it directly into that environment. So we would have a migration script or whatever, which would use our regular objects to decide what should happen and how things should work out before adding such an constraint onto an element slot.
I understand. So one observation, disallowing drags could also be seen as a mode. An alternative could be that you can drag it in, but it's shown somehow that it's not valid in this position.
Yeah,
then you could use the same.
Yeah.
Then you could use the same approach when you add the constraint, the way the object in the collection looks could be adapted.
Yeah. Well, what comes to mind is that we would then we might not allow it to drag in, but then give like some notice or something other to indicate to the user that there is a reason why it can't go there.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like to give
Yes,
as much
that's-
context sensitive information as possible.
Yeah. That's an interesting one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can you refactor the types of the slots?
Well, that is sometimes a tricky thing, and that's the what we call the warnings. Every now and then, a few things don't work as expected. So there's some work on our side, on the development side, for refactoring those things. Well, you see here on the screen, the Z migrate is one of our means to do that, but that's pretty much a sort of laborsome thing we have to do.
Well, so there's
Right.
always the need for data migration after a system has gone into production. You might want to change your model, and sometimes that can be done easily by adding or removing, but sometimes you need to change something or convert, transform. So we've got something that we call Z migrate. Yeah, it's just
Z migrate.
We had it start with C because it then ends up at the absolute bottom of the method list. But basically, it is a very small framework to go over all of the entities, see if they have a migration for a specific application version, and then ask each entity to perform the migration itself. So it keeps the object encapsulation. The object itself can do whatever is needed to migrate. And there's no external entity that's poking around in the database or anything. Although we do have to do something similar to that every once in a while, but that works. So the pattern sometimes is to add a new element, then install a migration method for a specific application version, run that in production after extensive testing, of course. And after the migration has taken place, you can leave it in a state where the old element can be removed without any issue.
Right.
On the next release.
On the next release, yeah.
So how do you specify the application version? That also a method?
That's just a method, yeah. So we've got at the moment, this is part of something that we're still refactoring. Currently, we have a application-specific web application, which inherits from Expressive Systems web application.
Right.
And we've really been able to dress it down over the last couple of days. It only has very minor behaviors, which makes it obsolete as its own class. And we're making a push to make this completely declarative in a way. But we do have sort of an application global. At the moment, we call that the domain class. There's only one instance of that object. And that's where some application-specific information might be kept or behavior might be implemented, but also migration is in here. So it sees what the current application version is, and it will, which is just an integer.
All right.
And it will just recursively perform the Z migrate with the version selector on all of the relevant entities.
Yeah. So it's our responsibility to make sure that these migrate methods are idempotent. You can run them again and again, and it shouldn't change things.
Yeah.
Right. Elegant. Thanks.
Do you store an audit trail in the database of what you've executed and when?
You mean, what do you mean, like messages between objects or?
No, what I mean is that when you run these migrations, do you actually keep track of in the database when, you know, exactly the set of migration method has been run?
Oh,
That's one of the extensions that we might make once we need it. I've worked with other, you know, what's the name, Flyweight, I think, and you've got different other database migration libraries, and those are Java ones, and they follow a similar pattern. So yeah, if we need to, we can do something like that, but at the moment we don't need to. Good question. Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah, I think that's that wraps it up. Let's go back to the presentation. So just to talk a little bit about ideas and future work, we talked about undo, redo, which seems easy, but might not actually be that easy. So that's something that's on the roadmap. Persistent user sessions, Erik already mentioned, to have the user decide, or maybe automatically, to persist the whole object graph of presenters that are currently active within the user session. So when the person returns to the application, all of the windows and UI elements are exactly in the place where he or she left them. We're now working in the Pharo image, but it's actually quite feasible, we believe, to implement a system browser, inspector, and playground as these expressive system UI elements, and pull more of the development also into the browser. But that's something that we need to figure out, how much of that is going to be useful, because it's not a goal in itself. So it should be a means to make our work easier, or maybe to support power users to do certain things in an application. Mobile UI, of course, either tablet or smartphone. The whole interaction between human and mobile device is completely different. So we need to look at ways to design the UI to really support that in an expressive way.
yeah. But David will help us with this, so that's going to be pretty fine.
Yeah, that's a great thing. So the way we might do that is to use what used to be called Cordova. I think it's now, I don't remember the name. There was a new name for it. The Ionic framework is also very good as a hybrid app framework. So we might be able to incorporate our Smalltalk image in there and hook it up to a mobile device hardware. And then, yeah, the active framework to actually have fully fledged actors as entities. Who knows? Distributed Smalltalk would be nice. We need to look at scaling, clustering sometime in the future. So we don't know where that will lead to, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and we still have a lot of also smaller things, but probably also big things on our list of things we want to work on. So yeah, a lot to do. But we like to take that, as Jonathan already said, with a child's view, open to things that come up, things we have to solve, and not try to solve things which aren't a problem yet. That again, that might be also a bit naive, but it for now that works out quite well. And
yeah, and I think as an industry, we've been gathering patterns for more than 50 years now, and a lot of patterns build on previous patterns and have a lot of assumptions. And since we do things so differently in some areas, we assume that a lot of those assumptions might not hold in the new environment. So we actually, that's why we take that child's perspective. And well, the downside might be that we spend a lot of time going down a certain path and then figure out what the initial reasons were to come up with the pattern, and we might have to decide to go along with it anyway. But there might be easier ways to solve things. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and Liquibase. Yeah, I know both. They're nice, nice frameworks. And thanks, Tim. It's good to know that Shoelace works well on mobile. Yeah.
I have one question. So you talked about Richard Pawson, the naked object inventor, and the current incarnation of that framework, the ISIS framework, has moved to a very different UI concept. You mentioned that Richard was shocked that you still use the old one. So have you looked at the new UI, and what were the reasons that they moved away from this first incarnation? Do you know them?
I'm not sure if we are the ones to answer this question. Richard should probably answer it himself. Unfortunately, again, he's not here. Fortunately for him, he's on vacation, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this, but I can't remember exactly what the reasons were, and it's evolved over maybe what was it, 8 years or longer, maybe 10 years or longer.
Yeah.
So it's probably hard to really pinpoint the actual reasons.
I do remember that, and it wasn't the main point, but one of the points Richard also made was like technology at that time, like what browsers could do, and performance probably of browsers wasn't that high as it is right now. So made some things, but it wasn't the main point. So don't be fooled by that one. But no, I also can't exactly pinpoint the main reason for. Sorry, Richard. We did pay attention, but I have to admit
well, and as I understood it, the naked objects framework was also driven by demand from customers, right? So it could be that the customers wanted a specific design for UI, and that was the reason why it evolved in that direction. Yeah, who knows? But yeah, it's a good question.
Other questions?
Yeah,
maybe.
We've got a few minutes. I also wouldn't mind to wrap up. It's 10 o'clock over here. So
how much of what you presented is available for others to use? I guess some of it, is I don't know, is it proprietary, or some of it is going to be specific to your domain, but the mechanisms for slots and the way that you can build things, is that something that you will open up? Because I know that when I was first looking at CodeParadise, that was the bit that's just like, oh crap, I've got to write all this stuff. It seems like you've got quite an elegant solution that is a good starting place for people if they want to build something in CodeParadise. But is that something that is a layer on top that you'll make available, or is that sort of like left to the reader as an exercise?
Yeah, well, fair question. We have the intention to open source. However, we also love the freedom that we currently have to make design decisions and so on. We're not nearly halfway where we want to be, and for the foreseeable future, let's say at least 6 months or something like that, we'll keep it as a private seed repository. But we do see it becoming open source in the future. And yeah, of course, if you're interested, we'll have to discuss that amongst ourselves. But I don't see immediate reasons not to share some of this code if there's a good reason for the interest. At the moment, we're fully invested in making this work and developing it. So we have our hands full with investing in the framework and also doing client work. So we just can't spare much time to support or answer questions on a regular basis. But there is an upside to collaboration, obviously. So yeah, do let us know if you're inspired and interested, and maybe we can work something out.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's a great framework. I just ran out of steam and time myself, but I'd like to pick it up again have another crack at it because it's so much fun.
Nice
New way
to hear.
of programming.
Yeah, it's great.
And remember, CodeParadise itself will be and remain open source. And the examples of, for example, adding a web browser or inspector kind of thing might be something that ends up in CodeParadise instead of maybe the Expressive Systems as well. So it could be that parts will open up in open source more quickly than others. Again, time is pretty limited in the amount of work we have to do. So it's making some choices there. Yeah.
Do you need to change CodeParadise often when you work on Expressive Systems?
No. Tim has worked a bit on CodeParadise in an earlier phase, and that's I think after the like 2 years ago presentation, and since then I don't think there's been a lot of major changes. Bits and pieces, and there's some refactoring I'm going to do on the event mechanism probably, but that's not something that a user will probably even notice if you're a user of the framework. So no, it's quite limited. Yeah. You can look up the commit history if you like to see the exact changes. Of course, it's all online. It's on my GitHub account, and it's Erik on bike. So in case you're interested.
Yeah, it was in the meetup description.
Yeah.
All right. Any more specific questions? I think that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe a suggestion. Not myself, but a colleague of mine has extensive experience with using ISIS. He's really a big fan, and he used it in his company for several projects. So maybe some ISIS experience could also be interesting for your project. So just thinking.
If you would share some contact information, that
yes,
would be
I
nice.
will.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Feel free to send us email with other questions that you have. We'll do our best to answer them. So that's it from us. Thank you.